Lesson 2, Connect Percent and Proportion. In this lesson, we will use proportions to solve percent problems. The essential question for this lesson asks, how does proportional reasoning relate to percent? Example 1. Use a proportion to find the percent. The basketball team statistician tracked the shots Emily made and the shots she missed during the last game. What percent of attempted shots did she make? So according to the legend, the blue dots represent the shots made, and the purple dots represent the shots missed. In the first part of the solution, they tell us to draw a bar diagram and write a proportion to represent the number of shots made and the total number of shots. In this problem, when you look at the dots on the court, you'll notice that there are 9 blue dots. So I'm going to number them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then there are 3 purple dots. So 3 shots missed and 9 shots made. But remember, in a proportion, it's a part to whole ratio, meaning this time the part is the 9, but the number of shots that she took altogether is the 1 whole. So as we set up the proportion from the bar diagram, the 9 represents the part, but 1 whole is all of the attempted shots that she took, and that is 12. Okay. So our part to whole ratio is 9 to 12, and that's equal to that percent value over 100. So this time we are not looking for the part, but instead we are looking for the percent number. So we're going to solve the proportion to find the percent of shots that she made during the last game. So here's that proportion again. And we're going to solve this just like we solved the equations from before, where we had a division problem. And what we were missing was the top part of that part of the expression. So we're going to multiply both parts by that denominator number, which is 100. And when we do that, we end up with 75, which means Emily made 75% of her shots. Next, let's look at the try it question. Camila makes 2 of her 5 shots attempted. Is the percent of shots she made more than, less than, or the same as Emily's percent of shots? So Camila made 2 of her 5 shots. So 2 shots were made out of 5 shots attempted. We're looking for that percent number again out of 100. So her part to whole ratio is 2 to 5. And that percent number always goes over 100. So in order to solve this for the letter P, which is in the top part of my number, my ratio there, I'm going to multiply both sides by 100. Now, if you do the 2 divided by 5, if you take care of this piece of your problem first, okay, remember 2 divided by 5, okay, do that on your calculator, equals this number here, that decimal, 4/10. And then when I multiply that by 100, I get 40%. So that percent is 40%. Since Camila made 40% of her shots, Camila's percent of the shots made is less than Emily's. Convince me. A hockey goalie stops 37 out of 40 shots. What percent of attempted goals did she stop? In this problem, we are going to set up our ratio 37 out of 40. And we're looking for what percent that is out of 100. So in order to solve this, we're going to go ahead and multiply both sides of our proportion by 100. And then we're going to get that percent number. So 100 times 37 divided by 40 is the same as what we would get if we did 100 times 37 and then divided by 40. Which gives me 3,700 divided by 40, which is 92 5/10. Or I can do 100 times 37 divided by 40, and if I do that division first, I get this number right here. And then when I multiply that by 100, I get 92 5/10%. So in both cases, I get the exact same answer. It's just two different ways of looking at the work for the problem. You can either multiply your whole number by your numerator and divide by the denominator, like we did right here in this example, this part right here, or you can divide the numerator and denominator to get a decimal first and then multiply by 100. Example 2, use a proportion to find the part. A plan to expand Megan's room will make the length of the room 175% of the current length. What will be the new length of her room? Draw a bar diagram to represent the problem and then write a percent proportion to find the new length. So we're looking for the number of meters that is equal to 175% of the original length of the room, which was 4 meters. So in this problem, our part to whole ratio is made up of those elements. So n is the part that we're looking for out of 4 meters total from the old room, and our percentage for the new room is 175 out of 100, which is the percent that represents the one whole, what the room is now. In order to solve this, you will multiply both sides by 4. And then there are two ways to look at the answer. So they give you the work that you see here. They give this to you right here. These two things are the same. But what they don't show you is how they end up with 7 as the number of meters in the new room. So I'm going to show you two ways of doing that. So when you do n equals, you have two choices here. You can take that 175, divide it by 100, and get a decimal, and that decimal would be 1 75/100, and then multiply that by 4, and you would get 7. Or you can do 175 times 4 and divide that result by 100. So what you would end up with when you multiply that is you would end up with 700 over 100, which is equal to 7. So there are two ways to do the computation in order to solve that proportion. Example 3 asks us to use a proportion to find the whole. So this time we're going to be looking for the number that's on the bottom of our ratio instead of the number that's on the top. So this time we're looking for the one whole. The nutrition label shows the percents of recommended daily intake for nutrients found in a serving of soy milk. How many milligrams of calcium should you consume each day? Write a percent proportion to find the amount of calcium. So here's that percent proportion written out in words to tell you where your part and your whole values are. So the calcium per serving is the part. That's the piece that tells us how much is in the soy milk currently. The daily value is how much we need. That's the whole amount. Okay, so we have the part that we have in the soy milk, and then we have the whole, which is what our body needs for the entire day. In this case, when you look at the label, if you look over here on the label, okay, 20% is what's contained in the soy milk, and that 20% accounts for 260 milligrams. So that's where these numbers right here come from that are in the top part of those ratios. The 260 is the part out of how many milligrams total, and 20 is the percent out of the total, which is 100. In this problem, we have to get that variable W out of the denominator. So in order to do that, we multiply both sides of that ratio by W. So what's left on the left-hand side is just the 260. Okay, that comes down to the next row. And on the right-hand side, we have this all together. So they show us this piece right here, which is we multiply the 20 times the W, that's why the W goes on top, and then divide by 100. Well, in order to do that, we have to use what we call reciprocals. Now, you may remember this from 6th grade. You're going to flip the fraction over. So a fraction of 20 over 100 gets flipped to be 100 over 20. The W is going to stay put, but we're going to flip the numbers in the fraction and multiply both sides of our proportion by that flipped over fraction. So in this case, the 20 and 100 are both in the numerator and the denominator, so they cancel each other out. Then on the left-hand side, we need to do this computation. So you can do 260 times 100 divided by 20, and that will give you this 1,300. Or you can do 260 times and then do 100 divided by 20, which is 5. And if you do 260 times 5, you also get 1,300. So the amount of calcium that your body needs each day is 1,300 milligrams. Now let's look at the try it questions. Try it A is just like example 2, and try it B is just like example 3. Try it A says, Megan's room is expanded so the width is 150% of those 3 meters. So we are looking for 150%, so that's over 100, and we want to know what the new width is out of 3 meters, which is the original length of her room, or I'm sorry, the original width of her room. In order to solve this, we're going to multiply both sides of that proportion by 3. And we get N equals 3 times 150 divided by 100, or we could do 3 times this fraction in its decimal form, which is 1 5/10. Again, or you can do 3 times 150 and then divide that result by 100. In any case, you get a new width of 4 5/10 meters. So I'm just going to show you that right here. And you have 2 different ways of getting that. You can either change that 150 over 100 into its decimal form by dividing first and then do the multiplication, or you can multiply the 3 times the top number, which is 150, and then divide it by 100. Both cases, doesn't matter, you get the same answer. Okay. So I have run almost out of room. If you need to get a scratch piece of paper, you may do that. Even just a half sheet of paper is probably plenty. We are going to do try it letter B, which is just like example 3. You're going to need to go back up to that soy milk and look again at the label. What is the recommended amount of iron needed each day? Round your answer to the nearest milligram. So this time we're going to be rounding our answer when we get all done. So what they tell us is that in the problem, and I'm going to use kind of a green here, the iron that's contained in the soy milk is 8 milligrams. So we have 8 milligrams is what's in the soy milk. they want us to tell how much you need each day. So I'm looking for that whole amount of iron that I need each day, which is 100% of what my body needs. What we know from the label is that those 8 milligrams make up 45% of what we need each day. So this is the proportion that we're going to solve. Now, when we solve this one, again, we have to multiply both sides by W, okay? And this time the W disappears from the right, but you'll notice that it's over here on the left. So this is the math now that I need to clean up a little bit. So I can do two things. I can say W times 45 over 100, and then multiply both sides by that reciprocal fraction, which is 100 over 45. Okay, now the hundreds and the 45s cancel out on that side. So what I'm left with is W equals 8 times 100 divided by 45, which doesn't matter how you do that on the calculator, you're going to get 17.7, and then that 7 goes on and on and on and on, so you put a bar across it. Now, in order to represent this correctly, because it does tell us to round to the nearest milligram, we would say that's closest to 18 milligrams. Next, let's look at the key concept and try some problems on the practice and problem solving as well. The key concept simply summarizes for us what we've learned in this lesson, and that is to take a proportion like so and use it to solve for parts, wholes, or percents. We can use that proportion to solve for any of those pieces that we need when we are missing one piece in that problem. So here's what it looks like in the bar diagram, okay, that helps us set up where those pieces go. So now what you're going to do on your own, and this comes from pages 146 to 148, I want you to try to set up on your own and solve numbers 2, 4, 5, 8 through 10, and 14. So that's a total of 7 questions that I want you to try on your own. Now we will be talking about these in class, so if you don't get all of them, that's okay, but these are the ones that I want you to try first, and then we'll go over questions that you have as well as these problems in class the next time we meet.